Hello students, welcome back. Today we will be doing a new topic, that is IAm Malala. Cross-curricular connection. Youth leadership means training young people as change agents in their communities. Youth participation in social change focuses more on issue-oriented activism than traditional politics. Youth today have taken lead roles in public protests and advocacy around anti-war activism, anti-crime, and government corruption. Many young leaders have taken active part in leadership programs in societies around the world to bring a change. Youth leaders achieve things unachieved by adults, are recognized as role models by media, society, and teachers. Collect information and read up news articles on such leaders. Just along the street from our new house was an abandoned strip of land that people used as a rubbish dump. There is no rubbish collected in SWAT. Quickly, it became a rubbish mountain. I didn't like walking near it as it smelled so bad. Sometimes we would spot rats running through it and crows would circle overhead. One day, my brothers were not home, and my mother had asked me to throw away some potato peel and eggshells. I wrinkled my nose as I approached, swatting away flies and making sure I didn't step on anything in my nice shoes. As I threw the rubbish on the mountain of rotting food, I saw something move and I jumped. It was a girl about my age. Her hair was matted and her skin was covered in sores. She looked like I imagined Shashaka, the dirty woman they told us about in tales in the village to make us wash. The girl had a big sack and was sorting rubbish into piles. One for cans, one for bottle tops, another for glass, and another for paper. Nearby, there were boys fishing in the pile for metal using magnets on strings. I wanted to talk to the children, but I was too scared. That afternoon, when my father came home from school, I told him about the scavenger children and begged him to go with me to look. He tried to talk to them, but they ran away. He explained that the children would sell what they had sorted to a garbage shop for a few rupees. The shop would then sell it on at a profit. On the way back home, I noticed that he was in tears. You must give them free places at your school, I begged. He laughed. My mother and I had already persuaded him to give free places to a number of girls. Though my mother was not educated, she was the practical one in the family, the doer, while my father was the talker. She was always out helping people. My father would get angry sometimes. He would arrive home at lunchtime and call out, Torpe kya? I am home, only to find she was out and there was no lunch for him. Then he would find she was at the hospital visiting someone who was ill or had gone to help a family. So he could not stay cross. Sometimes, though she would be out because she was shopping for clothes in the China bazaar, and there that would be a different matter. Wherever we lived, my mother filled our house with people. I shared my room with my cousin Anisa from the village, who had come to live with us so she could go to school, and a girl called Shehnaz, whose mother Sultana had once worked in our house. Shehnaz and her sister had always been sent out to collect garbage after their father had died, leaving them very poor. One of her brothers was mentally ill and was always doing strange things like setting fire to their clothes or selling the electric fan we gave them to keep cool. Sultana was very short tempered, and my mother did not like having her in the house. But my father arranged a small allowance for her and a place for Shehnaz and her other brother at his school. Shehnaz had never been to school, so even though she was 2 years older than me, she was put two classes below. and she came to live with us so that I could help her. There was also Nuria, whose mother, Karu, did some of our washing and cleaning, and Al-Shiba, one of the daughters of Khalida, the woman who helped my mother with the cooking. Khalida had been sold into marriage to an old man who used to beat her, and eventually she ran away with her three daughters. Her own family would not take her back because it is believed that a woman who has left her husband has brought shame on her family. For a while, her daughters also had to collect rubbish to survive. Her story was like something out of the novels I had started reading. The school had expanded a lot by then and had three buildings. The original one in Landikas was a primary school, and then there was a high school for girls on Yaya Street and one for boys with a big garden of roses near the remains of the Buddhist temple. We had about 800 students in total, and although the school was not really making money, my father gave away more than 100 free places. One of them was to a boy whose father, Sharafat Ali, had helped my father when he was a penniless college student. They were friends from the village. Sharafat Ali worked at the electricity company, and he would give my father a few hundred rupees whenever he would spare them. My father was happy to be able to repay his kindness. Another was a girl in my class called Kausar, whose father embroidered clothes and shawls, a trade our region was famous for. When we went on school trips to visit the mountains, I knew she couldn't afford them, so I would pay for her with my pocket money. Giving places to poor children didn't just mean my father lost their fees. Some of the rich parents took the children out of the school when they realized they were sharing classrooms with the sons and daughters of people who cleaned their houses or stitched their clothes. They thought it was shameful for the children to mix with those from poor families. My mother said it was hard for the poor children to learn when they were not getting enough food at home. So some of the girls would come to our house for breakfast. My father joked that our home had become a boarding house. Having so many people around made it hard to study. I had been delighted to have my own room, and my father had even bought me a dressing table to work on. But now I had two other girls in the room. I want space, I'd cry. But then I felt guilty, as I knew we were lucky. I thought back to the children working on the rubbish heap. I kept seeing the dirty face of the girl from the dump and continued to pester my father to give them places at our school. He tried to explain that those children were breadwinners. So if they went to school, even for free, the whole family would go hungry. Would go hungry. However, he got a wealthy philanthropist, Azade Khan, to pay for him to produce a leaflet asking Kai Hasul e ilm in bachun ka hak nahi? Is education not the right of these children? My father printed thousands of these leaflets, left them at local meetings, and distributed them around town. By then, my father was becoming a well-known figure in SWAT. Even though he was not a Khan or a rich man, people listened to him. They knew he would have something interesting to say at workshops and seminars and wasn't afraid to criticize the authorities, even the army, which was now running our country. He was becoming known to the army too, and friends told him that the local commander had called him lethal in public. My father didn't know what exactly the brigadier meant, but in our country, where the army is so powerful, it did not bode well. One of his pet hates was the ghost schools. Influential people in remote areas took money from the government for schools, which never saw a single pupil. Instead, they used the buildings for their hujras or even to keep their animals. There were there was even a case of a man drawing a teacher's pension when he had never taught a day in his life. Aside from corruption and bad government, my father's main concern in those days was the environment. Mingora was expanding quickly. Around 1,75,000 people now called it home. And our once fresh air was becoming very polluted from all the vehicles and cooking fires. The beautiful trees on our hills and mountains were being chopped down for timber. My father said only around half the town's population had access to safe drinking water, and most, like us, had no sanitation. So he and his friends set up something called the Global Peace Council, which, despite its name, had very local concerns. The name was ironic, and my father often laughed about it. But the organization's aim was serious, to preserve the environment of SWAT and promote peace and education among local people. My father also loved to write poetry, sometimes about love, but often on controversial themes such as honor killings and women's rights. Once he visited Afghanistan for a poetry festival at the Kabul International Hotel, where he read a poem about peace. It was mentioned as the most inspiring in the closing speech, and some in the audience asked him to repeat whole stanzas and couplets, exclaiming "Wawa" when a particular line pleased them, which is a bit like bravo. Even my grandfather was proud. Son, may you be the star in the sky of knowledge, he used to say. We were proud, but his higher profile meant we didn't see him very much. It was always our mother who shopped for our clothes and took us to hospital if we were ill. Even though in our culture, particularly for those of us from villages, a woman is not supposed to do these things alone. So one of my father's nephews would have to go along. I hope students, y'all have enjoyed the chapter and y'all have understood and y'all have learned something from it. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.